GQ, now live here.
Chandra Luckett, Director of Marketing and Communications here at Chris 180. And today we are excited to join you to talk about social emotional learning and how parents who are now homeschool teachers can institute this at home to create a calm environment in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. Today, joining us as our experts are the two program managers from our school-based services team, Lauren Gordon and Makini Austin. Please send your comments in the comments below. We'd love to hear your questions and answer anything that may help you as we navigate through this unprecedented crisis together. Ladies, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. So just a quick word about Chris 180's school-based mental health program. We serve 42 schools in the Atlanta metro area across 4 different school districts: Atlanta Public Schools, Clayton County Schools, DeKalb Schools, and Fulton County Schools. And we are generally in the schools full-time or part-time providing mental health services, but we've recently switched to providing telehealth and telephonic services so our therapists and paraprofessionals can meet our families' needs throughout this time.
So today we wanted to talk to you a little bit about social emotional learning. And so first the question is, what is social emotional learning? And social emotional learning are the skills and the things that we can teach kids that it's the stuff that's not in the textbooks, right? So when kids go to school, they learn about English, they learn math, and there's a curriculum that's set up that teaches them these academic subjects. Oftentimes, though, we're not super intentional about the way that we teach them about their emotional learning and socially how they interact with others. And so in the schools, they have started to implement programs that help with that and that help encourage the learning in these areas. And I'm not quite sure that that is translated into this new online learning platform that they've given parents. And so as you have become teachers and homeschoolers, I don't know that they've given you the tools to help integrate this social emotional learning part in at home. And so it is something that they get sometimes in school. And so we're here because we want to be able to give you some tips and give you some things that are going to help you with helping integrate these things at home.
So one of the tools that we were talking about that is really helpful with this is a feelings chart. Now, you may have seen one of these charts somewhere, that how do I feel today, with a bunch of different faces on there. And there are feelings charts that are designed for all different ages. So ones that are geared toward younger children that have more simplified faces and simplified feelings. And then there's more geared toward teens that have emojis on there for feelings, and ones geared toward kind of old adults that have a bunch of different feelings and words that are more appropriate for adults.
Yes. I was going to say, I noticed, so, you know, where we get this idea from is when I'm going into schools visiting with our clinicians that work in the school setting, I can honestly say, I can't think of one of our clinicians that does not have a feelings chart on the wall. So whether they're working with the elementary school kids up to the high school kids, they have these charts. And they usually have a routine of when the kid comes in, they're kind of checking in and they're saying, hey, where are you today? How are you feeling? And I started to notice that if the check-in wasn't happening, the kid was prompting it because they wanted to be able to share how they were feeling. And so that's one of the things with social emotional learning is we're giving them language for what these feelings are. And the feelings chart is just a good succinct way to be able to do that.
Right. And there are a couple feelings charts that we've left in the comments for you. One that's geared toward younger kids and one that's geared toward older teens. And we wanted to share that a feelings chart is something, you don't have to use one of the ones that are online. You can make your own.
Absolutely.
If you've got paper and pen, you can have a feelings chart. I've drawn them. I'm not a professional artist by any means, but I've been able to draw faces well enough for kids to recognize them. You can look online. There's lots of downloadable ones, PDFs, coloring pages. ones that you can print out and cut feelings out and put them in different places in the chart?
Absolutely. Making the feelings chart, if you're looking for some activities, it's actually a great activity that you can engage and utilize. And then even when I think about even ways to utilize the feeling chart, I could think of, you could use it in the morning as a routine, and a routine when you wake up, have people check in, like, hey, how you feeling today? It could be a temperature of how they're currently feeling. It could be an aspiration of how they want to feel for the day.
That's right. And I think what's so important with feelings charts is that it's not just kids and teens that are checking in, but parents and families, caregivers as well. Because I feel like sometimes as a parent or caregiver, you might not feel like it's important for your kids to know how you feel. Or you might presume that kids know how you feel just by how you're acting or what you're saying. Yeah. But I think that, or we know that, adults modeling emotional expression, healthy emotional expression, is so important for children to see so that they can then do it themselves. If we want kids to be able to model healthy emotional expression when they're having a challenging time, we need to do it ourselves as adults, and a morning feelings chart check-in is a great way to do that.
Yeah, another time would be if there's something going on, So if your house is anything like my sister's house, where there's 3 kids, and sometimes, something might erupt, there might be a disagreement, might be some conflict, and it's an opportunity to be able to check in and say, okay, what happened, what's going on, and get a temperature and a reading in the moment. And so being able to, using scaling, and so, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're picking an angry emotion, where are you feeling, and where are you on the scale, and then how do, what are some things we can do to move you to another area on the feelings chart, and something, calm or agreeable.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, we have a question.
All right, so we've got a question from one of our viewers today. And one is, do you think kids can sense stress? I'm worried about my job, but I also have to teach them. Is there a way to let them know why mom or dad is sometimes distracted without scaring them?
That's a great question.
Nice question, viewer. So, yes, I think that, first of all, depending on the age of the kid, finding appropriate language to, one, be able to be transparent and honest about what is going on. In the absence of information, people, children included, will create their own story. And a lot of times the meaning they're going to assign to that story is going to be a lot more negative than what the actual truth is. And so being able to communicate to them and talk about what is going on and finding the appropriate way to express. A lot of times you're going to know your kid the best, know your child the best, and know the ways to communicate that to them. But I absolutely encourage being honest and transparent about what is going on.
And I think what's important too is to remember that transcends all ages. I have a toddler at home, and I know that at times when I am running around anxious and stressed, she becomes very clingy and very upset. And I think that understanding that the connection between her seeing me during times of stress and acknowledging, okay, she might need some more hugs, she might need some more attention. And so sometimes it's language, and sometimes it's being present for your kids in a different way to account for things that are going on.
Yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point in terms of recognizing and understanding how people are responding to you. Because when you recognize that someone, so like when you say that your daughter is having a different response, you recognize the clinginess. And so it's important to understand is that if this is how the person is responding, what is it that I'm giving off in the moment? And so recognize that people's response is usually a response to what we're doing. And so being very aware and being in tune to, okay, so what's going on with me? And so that's one of those times for parents to check in on the feeling chart and say, okay, like where am I, and where are my emotions right now? Kids are an excellent barometer because they don't really have a filter, and so they're going to be a lot more transparent with you with regard to what you're giving off. Whereas sometimes the older we are, we'll mask our
Right.
response to people. And so kids are great. So you have a great barometer at home.
Yeah, she is great for us.
It lets you know exactly where you're like, Mom, no, not right now. Mom,
Yeah.
you're not being a regular mom today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and so one of the other things we wanted to talk about in terms of tools. And so say you are doing a check-in and you're really escalated, your kid's really escalated. What are some things that you can do? And so one idea is creating a space in your house or in a room, but creating a safe space, a quiet space, a calm down corner, a chill out spot, whatever you'd like to call it. But creating a space that it's like a clear, here's a spot where you can go and take a break. Here's a spot where you can go and have a calm down moment. You can use anything to create this spot. You can use pillows, you can use a soft blanket, pictures, you can put art supplies over there, pencil or pen and paper to write or journal thoughts. It's unlimited what you can do. I think the idea is curating a very particular space and a space that you identify. And again, like with the feelings chart, this is not unique or only for the kids to use. This is something as well. Parents, what you're deciding is you need a cool down moment. You can utilize the calm space or the chill spot for yourselves as well.
That's something as a therapist I've used as a group leader when I run groups with teenagers, that when I've needed a moment that I've gone and sat in the calm down space, and it's really powerful because, like you said earlier, that modeling that healthy emotional expression helps kids, teens, youth be able to do that for themselves. And the other piece with what you're saying, sometimes for families, they might feel like, well, I just want to power through and get the schoolwork done so we can move on with our day. Parents and caregivers might have their own work to do. They have other responsibilities throughout this time, and getting through the schoolwork would be helpful to be able to move on. And I know that it might seem counterintuitive to slow down to move forward, but it's actually something that we talk about a lot within the trauma-informed care practices that we use, this idea of slowing down to speed up, that when we take that moment to slow down to deal with kids who are agitated or frustrated. As adults, we know we sometimes need to take a minute when we're agitated and frustrated, and if someone's telling us we need to do something now or focus on it now, we might get into a power struggle as parents and caregivers, and then that's going to completely stop the work versus letting time for that to go into that calm down corner, engage our senses, relax, and then being able to move on with our work. And please send your questions and comments in below. We're happy to answer them throughout this time.
And we have another question as a follow-up. So it says, how much time should I spend on teaching social emotional learning each day? Or should it be a weekly thing?
There's not a prescribed amount of time. I would say absolutely taking the opportunities when they present themselves. And what you will find is they will present themselves frequently, right? And so when you see an opportunity that there's something going on, and it doesn't even have to be just negative emotions, positive as well. And taking a moment to understand, so like if the kid is if you're having a really good day, or your child is having a really good day, pausing and saying like, hey, you seem in a really good mood. Like, what's going on? What did you do different today? And we have another question.
Yes.
All right, we have a question from Melissa, and she asked, how can I help if my child is getting antsy or irritable? How can I get them to calm down or use the calm down corner without it feeling like a punishment or time out?
That's a great question, Melissa. Well, I would say that when you're thinking about calm down corner, first of all, we want to think about it as something that's voluntary or that is being suggested. Forcing someone to go into a calm down corner feels like timeout, and there's a difference in that we're not looking for kids to think about what they've done. We're looking for kids to process through their emotions and take a moment to be able to move on. So it might be more of a suggestion offering, why don't you take 5 minutes and go draw if that's something you enjoy doing, or why don't you take a couple minutes, take a break, go relax, and then we can move on.
Yes. You can also put things in the calm down corner that are enjoyable and that they would enjoy and like to do in the calm down corner. You can have them take a snack to the calm down corner. Why, you know what, why don't we have a snack and have a seat over in the calm down corner and enjoy your snack? So it doesn't have to be punitive or something negative. It definitely, you can incorporate things in the calm down corner that are fun and positive.
Yeah, and I think the idea too of calm down corners is it's also teaching kids to be able to regulate their emotions even when they're not in the calm down corners. So they're going to learn that skill. So to Melissa's question, your child might learn when I'm feeling antsy or agitated that maybe I need to have a snack, draw for a few minutes, take a break. And so that at some point you might not need the corner itself, you'll be able to do it, or your kids will be able to do it on their own.
And then don't be surprised if your kids suggest you go to the calm down corner. They might be like, Mom, you know, Melissa, you might get that. Mom, you need the calm down corner. You know, and then that's an opportunity to model. That's another one. You can even model the behavior. If you feel yourself escalating, modeling going to the calm down corner. Like, you know what? I am having a moment. I think I need to have a snack in the calm down corner. Because parents like snacks too.
That's right.
Parents love snacks.
That's right.
And just one, you know, when we were thinking about we use the calm down corner as an example. Some other examples that we were thinking of, one that came up was have a brainstorming session. And in your brainstorming session, create things that are breaks from the day, things that might be fun. So whether it's taking a walk, drawing a picture, doing cartwheels in the front yard, brainstorm, come up with whatever you can come up with. Write these things down on pieces of paper and put them in something, a shoebox, a jar. And when people are feeling antsy, then pick something out the jar randomly and engage, indulge. Go do something that feels fun, feels like, you know, an opportunity to take a break.
We have a question.
All right, so this one transitioning to older kids. So I've heard the word resilient so much in the past few weeks. How can we help our kids be resilient? I have a high school senior who unfortunately is missing so many of the special moments right now.
Earlier.
We were, you know, and we definitely wanted to address, we know we got the news that school will be out for the remainder of the year. And for some, that is very disheartening. You know, myself, you know, one of my most favorite people in the whole world is graduating from high school this year. And I realized that throughout his entire life that I've been waiting for this moment for him. I've watched him have these moments academically throughout his life, thinking of, oh, he's going to be so proud of himself when it's time for him to graduate. And so I've been waiting for this moment. And so, you know, that is, it is a tough thing to experience, especially when you feel like there's a significant milestone that is coming up and we're having to figure out how do we transition and what does it look like? What does it look like for us to be able to celebrate these things? So resilience, how do we promote resilience in our kids through this time? And one thing I would say is that we figure out how do we celebrate it, right? That there's still ways that we can figure out how to acknowledge. It won't look like what we traditionally are used to it looking like. And I think that some of these things are things that you planned your whole life with the model in place that we were used to seeing, right? We're used to graduation looking a certain way. We're used to these transitions in life looking a particular way. And now that they're gonna have to look a little bit different.
Yeah, I think that something we have to acknowledge is that for teens, especially from a psychological perspective, your teenage years is a time where you are supposed to be pulling away from your families a little bit and getting closer to your friends, and to not be able to celebrate that milestone, we need to give our teens the space and the tools to feel frustrated and sad about it, because it's, you know, we shouldn't encourage them to move on. They should have that time to feel sad and frustrated, to connect with their friends different ways. I know for me, my birthday was on Monday, and I have to admit, it was hard for me, harder than I expected that it was going to be, to not be able to see people in person. And my husband put together a virtual Zoom surprise party for me with some of my family and friends, which was different, but I really appreciated that opportunity to get folks together, even though we couldn't physically be in the same room, that I really loved seeing everyone. And we need to think about that for our teens as well. How can we have those experiences while we are remote from each other?
Yes. We have a question.
All right, so this one is from Elizabeth, and she says, my child is an only child, and we have been working on him playing with others and sharing. Now he's falling back into old habits because he's not around kids. Any suggestions on how to help him continue to work on this?
That is a good question.
Yeah.
I know we keep saying that they're good questions because they are. Like I'm not sure what I was expecting the questions to be, but you guys have some really good, some thoughts are going on out there.
I would say, did you have?
I don't.
I would say for families, just going back to the idea of modeling things with each other, modeling with even in your interactions with your children, that sharing things within the home, whether it's times spent watching television, if that's something your family does, or if at the dinner table, that there may be opportunities to look for as a caregiver or parent to be able to find those sharing moments, whatever they might be.
Yes.
Yeah. We have
Another question.
All right, so James says, part of our reality at home right now is interpersonal relationships between all our kids who are definitely struggling, getting along, being together so much. Any suggestions for keeping kids on track with what they need to be doing, but also get along better?
Keeping kids on track, it doesn't sound fun, but creating a schedule and making sure that you incorporate in the schedule, downtime and break time. And I think that we have the opportunity to be a little bit generous with what the schedule looks like. It doesn't have to be the same, you're up by 6 a.m. and have to be at school by a certain time, but definitely creating a schedule and creating structure and consistency within that. So whatever grace you give and whatever breaks, but just creating some consistency and some structure.
I think too, physical activity, kids moving around is so important for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, if you're someone like me who likes to have my home look a particular way, we might need to relax some of that a little bit, to acknowledge that, our kids might need to make more of a mess than we feel comfortable with right now, which might help them get along interpersonally, so that they can feel like they can get out some of what's going on inside of them.
So we've got a follow-up question, and it says, is teaching empathy part of social emotional learning? I worry my kid is going to be mad at the world for weeks, if not longer.
Yes. Teaching empathy is a part of that. And and I'm glad to get that question, because I also wanted to touch on and make sure that we captured and answered or responded well to the question about resilience and just even the idea of empathy. And in addition to allowing everyone to experience and have their feelings about what is going on during this time, is to recognize that it's also a learning opportunity. And so even that idea of promoting resilience is that what we find is that the most resilient people have experienced struggles. And it's about how you rebound from the struggle. And being able to utilize this as an opportunity to say that and understand that things happen that are beyond our control, that we don't like, that I would often say it feels like a donkey kick, and this feels like a big donkey kick. But it's how do you rebound from it, and what are the things and what are the tools that we can give them that help them to see the other side.
Oh, we have a question.
All right, so this is from Dave, and he says, I think we're all feeling the stress of what's happening. How do we make sure we're taking care of our kids, but also taking care of us?
That's a great question, Dave. I think that we need to be intentional about our self-care during this time. So taking the time to to do things for ourselves, and again, modeling that for our kids, that we might need to take 5 minutes to sit and quietly. We might need to eat a snack. We might need to do certain things. And as parents or caregivers, you might not be able to do that until your children go to sleep. We have to meet ourselves where we are at. And again, this is something I need to remind myself, maybe that it is okay if the house doesn't look exactly as clean as I'd like it to be, because I might need to have that, to use that time for self-care versus making sure that I'm, keeping things germ-free.
Yes.
But that things might be a little bit messier than I'm comfortable with, so that I have time to do that self-care for myself.
I would say too, it's also important to know what is self-care for you. I mean, it's different for every person, and I think sometimes we can get so caught up in our daily lives, we don't really recognize what are the things that help us to relax and decompress. And so this is one of those times where you're going to have to figure out what is relaxing to you and what is self-care for you. It's because it will look different. For me, my self-care, my love language, if you will, is cooking for people. I love to cook. Being in the kitchen and then feeding people, it is how I nurture, and it's what feels good to me. That won't be the case for everybody. Some people don't like cooking. Maybe they like eating. We would be a perfect blend. And so, but it's knowing for yourself what are the things and what are the things that replenish you. Because I think that's the key, is how do I fill my tank? How do I get replenished?
Yeah. We have another question.
All right, so this is one of our final questions, and it reads, I find that joy is hard to come by in our household. Do you have tips on ways we can celebrate something each week?
You know what that makes me think of? We had talked about this. So in our counseling center, I've noticed that a lot of people have on their doors, they have these signs, and they'll say, take what you need. And then they have strips of paper on the bottom. And what they look like is like if you've ever seen like the bulletin board at a community center in a grocery store, and somebody's selling something and you can like rip the phone number off the bottom. And so people have these signs, and at the bottom it says, take what you need. And on the strips of paper, it might have love, a hug, understanding, compassion. And so there's different words on the little strips of paper. And I'm always every time I see it, I smile, because you can go by any person's door and there'll be some that are missing. And it lets me know that somebody was walking by and there was something that they needed that day that was on that list and on that door, and they took it for themselves. And that's one I think you could incorporate in any house, is being able to say, like, what are the things that you need, and posting it up somewhere and utilizing that as a tool.
Yeah, I think it's so important to remember as we're thinking about compassion and being resilient and finding joy, is that we have to first acknowledge that our entire, not just state, country, our entire world is enduring a trauma right now, and that things are not going to be business as usual. Because I think when we try to move forward, I heard someone say yesterday that we're not working from home, we're working from home during a crisis.
Yeah.
And I think that's so different. And we need to make that shift in our mind that things are going to look different and feel different.
Yes.
And those moments of joy might not, something that you might get joy from before might have been something that you can't do right now. So we have to really shift and think about, how are we going to find our new normal for now? What are things going to look like during this challenging time?
All right, thank you all so much for joining us for week 3 of our Facebook and Instagram Lunchtime Live series. Thank you to Makini and Lauren for sharing their professional insights and thoughts. To learn more about our counseling services and our school-based services, please visit chris180.org. Also, we need your help to continue to do the work we're doing during this COVID-19 crisis. Please go today to chris180.org/donate to make a gift of any donation that will help us change lives. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back next Thursday. If you'd like to share what you want to hear us talk about, please leave a message in the comments below or send us a message. Thank you so much.